What if everything you've been taught about the second coming is wrong? Not slightly off, completely wrong. What if Jesus isn't coming back the way the churches have been preaching for 2,000 years? What if the real return is already happening right now in ways you've never been taught to recognize? I'm about to share with you what one man discovered when he helped a stranded being from another world repair a mysterious device. What this being revealed about the exact timing of Christ's return will challenge everything you think you know about prophecy, about Scripture, about your own role in what's coming. But I have to warn you, this isn't comfortable information. It's not what you'll hear in any church. And once you understand it, you can't go back to waiting passively for a salvation that was never meant to come from the sky. If you've ever felt that something is missing from the traditional teachings about the end times, if you've sensed that the return of Jesus must be something more than clouds and trumpets and people disappearing, what you're about to hear will finally make it all make sense. But here's what will really shake you. There's a timeline, a specific window, and according to what this being shared, we are already inside it. The clock is ticking, and most of humanity has no idea. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Stories like this one reveal truths that have been hidden for millennia, and this particular truth is the most urgent of all. Now let me tell you how it all began for Thomas Whitfield on a quiet evening in rural Oregon, when a strange light in his barn changed everything he thought he knew about time, prophecy, and the true nature of Christ's return. Thomas Whitfield was 59 years old, retired, alone. 37 years he had worked as an electronics engineer for a defense contractor in Portland, circuit boards, radar systems, classified projects he still couldn't talk about. His whole life had been about solving problems, finding what was broken, fixing it. Now he lived on 20 acres of pine forest in rural Oregon. The property had belonged to his parents, old farmhouse, big barn he'd converted into a workshop. Quiet out here, too quiet most days. His wife Catherine had died 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 4 months from diagnosis to funeral. Thomas held her hand at the end, watched the monitors flatline, while some hospital chaplain murmured prayers that meant nothing. Empty words, hollow comfort. Catherine had been the believer. She dragged him to church on Sundays, kept a worn Bible on her nightstand, prayed before every meal while Thomas sat there in uncomfortable silence, waiting for the amen so he could eat. After she died, he tried to keep going. For her. Went to church alone for almost a year. Same pew they always shared. Listened to sermons about God's plan, about reunion in heaven, about how everything happens for a reason. But the words didn't land. They bounced off something hard inside him. If God had a plan, why did it include watching the kindest woman he ever knew waste away in agony? If heaven was real, why did it feel so distant, so abstract? Eventually, Thomas stopped going. The pastor called a few times, left messages about grief counseling, about community. Thomas never called back. He wasn't angry at God. That would require believing God was there to be angry at. He was just empty, hollowed out, going through the motions. His daughter Emily lived in Seattle. Called every Sunday. Thomas always said he was fine. Weather was good. Workshop kept him busy. Yes, he was eating properly. He never told her about the nights he sat on the porch staring at the stars, wondering if Catherine was out there somewhere, or if she had simply stopped existing. He never told anyone. Thomas had always been a man of logic, evidence. His whole career was built on understanding how things worked. Faith never came naturally to him. He went to church for Catherine, prayed for Catherine, tried to believe for Catherine. Now she was gone. No reason to pretend anymore. But something strange had been happening. For months now, Thomas would wake at 3 a.m. with a weird sensation in his chest. Not pain. Something else. A feeling that something was about to happen. Something was coming. He would lie in the dark, heart beating too fast, waiting for something he couldn't name. By dawn, the feeling would fade. He told himself it was nothing. Random firings of an aging brain, stress, loneliness, but it kept happening. Week after week. Sometimes in his workshop late at night, he would stop in the middle of a repair, feel certain he was being watched, turn around and scan the shadows between the shelves. Nothing, just old tools and older memories. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Thomas told no one about this. He was a rational man, an engineer. He didn't believe in premonitions or supernatural presences or anything that couldn't be measured with instruments, but he couldn't shake it, this sense that his quiet, meaningless retirement was building toward something, that all those years of technical training had been preparation for a task he hadn't been given yet. On the evening of March 14th, everything changed. Thomas was in his workshop, repairing a vintage tube amplifier, old Zenith from the 60s, delicate work. The lights flickered. He glanced up, annoyed. Power fluctuations were common out here in the rural grid, played havoc with his sensitive equipment. He waited for the lights to stabilize. They flickered again, then again. Then every device in the workshop went crazy. Oscilloscopes spiked to impossible readings. His ham radio picked up static that pulsed with an almost rhythmic quality. The fluorescent lights buzzed and strobed like something was interfering with the electrical field itself. "What the hell?" Thomas muttered, standing slowly. And then he saw it. Through the workshop window, a glow, soft blue-white light coming from somewhere behind the barn, pulsing gently, steadily, like a heartbeat. Thomas was not a man who frightened easily. 37 years working with high-voltage systems and classified technology had taught him to approach the unexpected with calm analysis. But as he walked toward the barn door, something shifted inside him. This was it. Whatever he had been sensing for months, whatever had been waking him at 3 a.m, whatever had been watching him from the shadows, it was here. He pushed open the door and stepped into the cold March night. What he found would shatter every assumption he had ever made about life, death, and the timeline humanity had been given before everything changed. The light was coming from behind the old tractor shed, 50 feet from where Thomas stood. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, his breath misting in the cold air. The glow pulsed brighter as he approached, that rhythmic quality, almost like breathing, almost like something alive. Thomas rounded the corner of the shed and stopped dead. There was a figure crouched on the ground. Humanoid, but not human. Definitely not human. The skin was grayish, almost silver in the strange light. The limbs were longer than they should be. The head slightly too large for the body. And the hands. The fingers were impossibly long and delicate, moving over something on the ground with a precision that reminded Thomas of a surgeon or a watchmaker. "Jesus Christ," Thomas whispered. The figure froze. Then slowly, very slowly, it turned to face him. The eyes. That's what hit Thomas first. 2 enormous black orbs, no whites, no iris, just endless darkness that reflected the pulsing blue light like liquid mirrors. Thomas couldn't move, couldn't breathe, every muscle in his body locked up as those impossible eyes fixed on him. "This isn't real," his mind screamed. "This can't be real. You're having a stroke, a hallucination. Something broke in your brain and now you're seeing things." But he could feel the cold ground under his boots, smell the pine trees, hear the wind rustling through the branches. Everything else was real, which meant this was real too. The creature didn't move, just watched him with those black mirror eyes. Thomas's engineering brain tried to find explanations, some kind of costume, a prank, kids from town messing with the old man who lived alone in the woods. But no costume looked like this. No makeup could create skin that seemed to glow faintly from within. No contact lenses could produce eyes that deep and dark and utterly alien. "Run," part of him said. "Get to the house, lock the doors, call someone." But his feet wouldn't obey. And then he noticed what the creature had been working on. A device, about the size of a shoebox, resting on the ground between them. It was the source of the blue light, pulsing from within like a mechanical heart. The surface was covered in patterns that shifted and changed as Thomas watched. Not quite symbols, not quite circuitry, something in between. The creature looked down at the device, then back at Thomas, and that's when Thomas heard it. Not with his ears. Inside his head, a voice, clear and calm, speaking directly into his thoughts. "Please, I need help." Thomas staggered backward. His hand shot to his temple as if he could physically block the intrusion. "What the hell?" he gasped. "What are you doing to me?" "I am communicating." The voice was patient, almost gentle. "This is how my kind speaks. I apologize if it is unsettling. I have no other way." Get out of my head. Thomas's voice cracked. Whatever you are, get out. I cannot harm you, Thomas Whitfield. I am not here to harm anyone. I am stranded. My device is damaged. Without it, I cannot return to my people. Thomas felt his heart hammering against his ribs. It knew his name. This thing knew his name. How do you know who I am? I have observed this area for some time, looking for someone who could help, someone with the skills to repair technology, someone who would not immediately respond with violence or fear. Thomas laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised even him. Not respond with fear? Look at me. I'm terrified. Yes, but you are still here. You have not run. You have not attacked. This tells me I chose correctly. Thomas stared at the creature, at those impossible eyes, at the device pulsing on the ground between them. 37 years of engineering, 37 years of looking at broken things and figuring out how to fix them. His hands had worked on some of the most advanced technology the military had ever developed, classified systems that most people didn't even know existed. And now, something from another world was asking for his help. This is insane, Thomas said. You know that, right? This is completely insane. The creature tilted its head slightly, a strangely human gesture. I understand your reaction. Your species has been taught that you are alone in the universe, that beings like me do not exist. This belief is incorrect, but I understand why my presence is difficult to accept. Thomas looked at the device again. Despite everything, despite the terror still coursing through his veins, he felt something else stirring. Curiosity. That old familiar itch he got whenever he encountered a problem he didn't understand. What is it? He asked, nodding toward the device. What does it do? It is a communication array, a link to my people, but it is also more than that. It contains information, records, knowledge that your species has been waiting to receive for a very long time. What kind of knowledge? The creature paused. Those black eyes studied Thomas with an intensity that made him feel like his entire soul was being examined. Knowledge about the one you call Jesus, about what he truly was, about the message he brought that has been misunderstood for 2,000 years, and most importantly, about the return that your religions have been predicting. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the March air. What do you know about Jesus? Everything. We were there, Thomas. We watched, we recorded, and we know exactly when and how the return will happen, because it is already beginning. Right now, in this generation. Thomas stood in silence. The wind picked up, sending dead leaves skittering across the ground. The device pulsed between them, steady, patient, waiting. Every rational part of his brain told him to walk away, call the authorities. Forget this ever happened, but there was another part. The part that had been waking him at 3 a.m, the part that had been sensing something coming, the part that had felt watched for months. That part already knew. This was what he had been waiting for. If I help you, Thomas said slowly, you'll tell me about Jesus, about the return? I will show you, not just tell. The device contains recordings, direct evidence, things that will answer questions humanity has been asking for millennia. Thomas looked at the creature, at the device, at the impossible situation he found himself in. Catherine had believed. All those years, she had believed in something greater. She had died still believing, even if she was afraid, and Thomas had spent 3 years wondering if any of it was real, wondering if there was any meaning to existence, wondering if Catherine was somewhere out there or just gone forever. Now something was offering answers, real answers, from a source that shouldn't exist. He took a deep breath, felt the cold air fill his lungs. All right, he said, show me what's broken. Let's see if I can fix it. The creature rose slowly to its full height, taller than Thomas by half a foot, that slight glow emanating from within its gray skin. Thank you, Thomas. The voice in his head carried something that felt almost like relief. What I'm about to show you will change everything you believe about your world, about your history, about what is coming. Are you prepared for that? Thomas thought about Catherine, about the empty pew at church, about the hollow feeling that had lived in his chest for 3 years. I've got nothing left to lose, he said. Show me. And as the creature led him toward the device, Thomas Whitfield had no idea that the next several hours would reveal truths about Jesus Christ that no church had ever taught, truths about a timeline that was already running out, truths that would transform him from a grieving widower into a man with the most important message humanity had ever received. Thomas knelt beside the device. Up close, he could see the damage. A crack ran along one side, faint, almost invisible, but it had disrupted something inside. "What happened to it?" he asked. Atmospheric interference during descent. The voice came calm and clear inside his mind. "Your planet's electromagnetic field is more turbulent than we anticipated. The impact damaged the crystalline matrix that powers the communication array." Thomas ran his fingers along the surface. The material was unlike anything he had ever touched, smooth but warm, almost organic. The patterns beneath the surface shifted in response to his touch. "This isn't metal," he murmured. "It's not plastic. What is it?" "A material your science has not yet discovered, but the underlying principles are similar to your electronics, energy flowing through structured pathways. The crack has disrupted that flow." Thomas studied the device. His engineering mind was already working, analyzing, looking for solutions. "I might be able to seal the fracture," he said slowly, "restore the pathway integrity, but I'd need to understand what I'm working with, how it functions." "I can show you." The creature extended one long hand toward the device. The surface began to glow brighter, and suddenly, Thomas saw. Not with his eyes, inside his mind. Schematics, diagrams, the internal architecture of the device laid out in perfect clarity. It was alien, completely foreign. But the logic was recognizable. Energy systems, data storage, communication protocols. It was technology, just far more advanced than anything Earth had produced. "My God," Thomas breathed, "this is incredible." "You understand it?" "I understand enough. Give me a few hours. I need to get some tools." Thomas spent the next 3 hours in his workshop. The creature followed, watching silently as he gathered equipment: soldering iron, oscilloscope, fiber optics, epoxy compounds. He worked on the device with the same focus he had brought to classified military systems decades ago: testing, measuring, carefully applying repairs to the crystalline structure. The creature observed everything, patient, still. As Thomas worked, questions burned in his mind, but he forced himself to focus on the task. Fix the device first, answers later. Finally, just after 2 a.m, he made the last connection. The device hummed. The glow stabilized. The patterns on the surface began flowing smoothly again. "I think that's it," Thomas said, leaning back. "Try it now." The creature placed its hand on the device, closed those enormous black eyes, remained still for nearly a minute. Then the eyes opened. "The connection is restored. You have succeeded, Thomas." Thomas felt a wave of relief. Then immediately the questions came flooding back. "All right," he said. "I fixed your device. Now tell me, what do you know about Jesus?" The creature was silent for a moment. Then it moved to the center of the workshop, stood beneath the fluorescent lights, those black eyes fixed on Thomas with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "What I am about to share will contradict much of what you have been taught. It may cause you distress. Do you still wish to know?" "Yes." "Very well. Let us begin with what Jesus truly was." The creature raised one hand. The device on the workbench began to glow brighter, and suddenly the air in front of Thomas shimmered, changed, became something else. A hologram, 3-dimensional, floating in the middle of his workshop. Thomas saw a man, dark hair, simple robes, standing on a hillside speaking to a crowd, Jesus of Nazareth. "That's him?" Thomas whispered. "That's really him?" "A recording, made by my people 2,000 years ago. We were there, Thomas. We watched his entire ministry, documented everything." Thomas stared at the image. It was so real, so detailed. He could see the expressions on the faces of the people listening, the wind moving through the grass, the dust on the hem of Jesus' robe. "Why?" Thomas asked. "Why were you watching?" "Because Jesus was not merely human." Thomas felt his stomach tighten. The creature continued. "He was what we call an ascended consciousness, a being who had evolved far beyond the need for physical form. He chose to incarnate on Earth during a critical period of your development, to plant seeds that would flower at the right moment. You're saying Jesus was an alien? Not in the way you imagine. He was not from another planet. He was from a higher dimension of existence, a level of consciousness that transcends physical location. He chose to become human, fully human, to demonstrate what humans are capable of becoming. Thomas shook his head. This is insane. Jesus was the Son of God, born of a virgin, divine. Yes, all of this is true, but not in the way your religions have interpreted it. The hologram shifted. Now it showed Jesus performing a healing, touching a man who had been blind, the man's eyes opening with shock and wonder. When Jesus healed, he was not performing supernatural miracles that only he could do. He was demonstrating spiritual technology, techniques for manipulating energy and matter through consciousness, abilities that exist within every human being. That's not possible, Thomas said. Regular people can't heal the blind. They cannot because they do not believe they can. They have been taught they are powerless, sinful, dependent on external salvation. But this was never Jesus' message. The hologram changed again. Jesus speaking to his disciples. The words appeared in Thomas's mind, translated directly into his understanding. The kingdom of God is within you. I and the Father are one. These things I do, you shall do also, and greater things than these. Thomas felt something shifting inside him. He knew those verses. He had heard them in the church countless times, but the creature was presenting them differently. Jesus was not claiming to be unique, the creature explained. He was demonstrating what every human soul is capable of when it awakens to its true nature. He was the example, not the exception. Thomas stood up from his workbench, paced across the workshop, his mind racing. So you're telling me the church got it wrong? 2,000 years of Christianity and they missed the point? They did not miss it entirely. They preserved the teachings, the stories, the miracles, but they interpreted them through a lens of separation. They made Jesus into a distant savior rather than an accessible example. They taught humans to worship him instead of become like him. Why? Why would they do that? Because people who believe they are powerless are easier to control. Because institutions thrive when followers depend on them for salvation. The distortion was not always intentional, but over centuries, the message shifted from empowerment to dependency. Thomas stopped pacing, turned to face the creature. And the return? The second coming? What about that? This is the most important part, Thomas. This is why I am here. The hologram shifted again. Now it showed Earth from space, blue and green and swirling white clouds. Your religions teach that Jesus will return physically, that he will descend from heaven on clouds of glory, that there will be trumpets and angels and a rapture that takes the faithful away. That's what the Bible says. That is what has been interpreted from symbolic language, but the true return is something different, something that is already happening. Thomas felt his pulse quicken. What do you mean already happening? Jesus planted seeds 2,000 years ago, seeds of consciousness, seeds of awakening. Those seeds have been dormant in humanity's collective awareness, growing slowly, waiting for the right conditions. The hologram zoomed in on the Earth. Points of light began appearing across the surface, scattered at first, then more and more, growing denser. The return of Christ is not one man coming down from the sky. It is the awakening of Christ consciousness in millions of humans simultaneously. It is the activation of the divine potential that Jesus demonstrated. It is humanity finally becoming what he showed was possible. Thomas stared at the lights spreading across the holographic Earth. Those lights, what are they? Each light represents a human who is beginning to awaken, who is starting to access their true spiritual nature. 20 years ago, there were only thousands. 10 years ago, hundreds of thousands. Now there are millions, and the number is accelerating. Accelerating toward what? A threshold, a tipping point. When enough humans awaken, when the collective consciousness reaches a certain frequency, everything changes. Your world transforms, not through destruction, through elevation. Thomas felt dizzy. He sat back down on his workbench stool. When? He asked. When does this threshold happen? The creature was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke with a gravity that made Thomas's blood run cold. The window opened in 2012. The The threshold must be reached by 2035. After that, the opportunity closes. The cycle resets, and humanity must wait another 26,000 years for the next chance. Thomas did the math. That's only 10 years from now. Yes, this is why I am here. This is why I sought someone who could repair the device. The message must spread. More humans must awaken. The timeline is short, and most of your species does not even know they are in a race. Thomas put his head in his hands. This was too much. Too fast. He was an engineer, a logical man, and now some creature from another world was telling him that Jesus was an interdimensional being, that the second coming was a mass awakening, and that humanity had 10 years to reach some kind of spiritual threshold or miss the chance for millennia. Why should I believe any of this? Thomas asked. How do I know you're not lying? Manipulating me? The creature moved closer. Those black eyes seemed to look straight through him. You felt me coming, Thomas, for months, waking at 3 a.m, sensing a presence, knowing something was about to change. That was not imagination. That was your own awakening beginning. You were drawn here tonight because you are ready to know. Thomas looked up. The creature was right. He couldn't deny what he had been feeling, the premonitions, the sense of being watched, the certainty that his life was building toward something. There is more, the creature continued. I can show you something that will remove all doubt, but it requires trust. Will you allow me to share directly with your consciousness? Thomas hesitated. What do you mean, share directly? I will transmit memories, experiences. You will see what I have seen, feel what I have felt. It is more convincing than any words or holograms, but you must be willing. Thomas looked at the creature, at the device he had repaired, at the hologram still floating in the air, showing a planet covered in points of awakening light. And Catherine would have known what to do. She had always trusted her faith, trusted that there was more to existence than what could be measured and analyzed. Maybe it was time Thomas learned to trust too. All right, he said. Show me. The creature extended its hand, placed 2 long fingers gently on Thomas's forehead. Close your eyes. Thomas obeyed, and then he was somewhere else entirely. He stood on a hillside in the ancient Galilee, not as a hologram this time. He was there. He could feel the sun on his face, smell the dry grass, hear the murmur of the crowd gathered around a figure in simple white robes. Jesus. Thomas watched as Jesus spoke, and this time he didn't just hear the words, he felt them, the frequency behind them, the energy they carried. Love was not just a concept, it was a force, a vibration that Jesus was transmitting with every word. Thomas could feel it washing over the crowd, feel it changing something in their very cells. The scene shifted. Now Thomas watched Jesus heal a woman who had been bleeding for years, but this time he saw what really happened. Jesus didn't do anything to her. He raised his own frequency so high, radiated so much love, that the woman's body simply remembered how to be whole. Her own healing capacity activated in response to his presence. That's the technology, Thomas realized. That's what the creature meant. It's not magic, it's frequency, resonance, one consciousness lifting another. The scene shifted again, the crucifixion. Thomas didn't want to see this, but he couldn't look away. He watched Jesus on the cross, felt the agony, but beneath the pain, something else, a vast, calm awareness that observed the suffering without being consumed by it. And he heard Jesus' thoughts in that moment. It is finished. The seeds are planted. Now they will grow. The scene shifted one final time. The resurrection, but not as Thomas had ever imagined it. Jesus didn't simply come back to life in the same body. He transformed. His physical form became light, became pure consciousness. And in that moment of transformation, something happened. A wave, an energy pulse, radiating out from the tomb across the entire planet. Thomas felt it wash through him, even across 2,000 years of time. The seeds, that's what Jesus planted at the resurrection. Not just teachings, an actual energetic code embedded in human consciousness, dormant until the right time. The vision faded. Thomas opened his eyes. He was back in his workshop. The creature stood before him. The hologram had disappeared. My God, Thomas whispered. Tears were streaming down his face. He hadn't even noticed when they started. It's real. It's all real. Yes, Jesus was real, not just a story, not just a historical figure. He was exactly what he said he was, and he planted something in us, something that's waking up now. Yes. Thomas wiped his face with trembling hands. The timeline, the 10 years, that's really how long we have. The threshold must be reached by 2035. This is not arbitrary. It corresponds to astronomical cycles, energetic alignments. The window only opens at specific intervals. Your species reached the beginning of this window in 2012. The peak opportunity is in the next decade. After 2035, the window narrows. By 2040, it closes entirely. And if we don't make it, if not enough people awaken, then humanity continues as it is. The suffering continues, the separation continues, and the next opportunity will not come for approximately 26,000 years. Thomas stood up. His legs were shaky, but he needed to move, to process. Why are you telling me this? Why not go to world leaders, scientists, people with actual influence? We have tried. Over many decades, those in power rarely listen. They are invested in the current systems. The message spreads better through ordinary people who are ready to hear it. People like you. I'm nobody. A retired engineer living alone in the woods. What am I supposed to do with this information? You will know. When you integrate what you have experienced tonight, you will understand your role. For now, simply know this. Every person who awakens makes it easier for others to awaken. The effect is exponential. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. 100 becomes 1,000. Thomas looked at the device on his workbench, the device he had repaired. What happens now? You leave? I must report to my people. Tell them the device is functional again. But Thomas, the knowledge I have shared with you is now part of you. You cannot forget it. You cannot go back to the life you had before. Thomas laughed softly, a strange sound in the quiet workshop. I haven't had a life for 3 years, just an existence. Then perhaps this is your opportunity for something more. Thomas met the creature's gaze. Those black eyes that had terrified him hours ago now seemed almost kind. My wife, Thomas said quietly. Catherine. She died believing in Jesus, in heaven, in all of it. Was she right? The creature was silent for a moment. Then she continues. Thomas, consciousness does not end at physical death. It transforms, expands, returns to source. Your wife exists now in a state of being that your current form cannot fully comprehend, but she is not gone. She has simply moved to a different frequency. Thomas felt his chest tighten. Fresh tears threatened to spill. Can I see her? Talk to her? Not through me, but when you awaken further, when you raise your own frequency, the separation will become thinner. You may sense her presence, feel her awareness. The veil between dimensions is not as solid as your science believes. Thomas nodded slowly. It wasn't the answer he wanted, but it was more hope than he had felt in 3 years. Thank you, he said, for telling me all of this, even if I don't fully understand it yet. Understanding will come. Trust the process, trust yourself, and remember what Jesus demonstrated. You are far more powerful than you have been taught to believe. The divine spark is not something you must earn or receive from outside. It is already within you. It always has been. The creature moved toward the door of the workshop. I must leave now, but before I go, there is one final thing you must understand about the timeline. Thomas straightened. What? The return of Jesus that your religions await is not a single event. It is a process, and the process has already begun. You are part of it now, Thomas, simply by knowing what you know. Simply by carrying this awareness, you are helping to reach the threshold. The creature paused at the door, turned back one final time. 10 years. Tell others. Help them awaken, not through force or persuasion, through example, through love, through living as if the kingdom is already here, because it is. And then the creature walked out into the darkness. Thomas followed, watched as the being moved across the property toward the old tractor shed. The device floated beside it, carried by some invisible force. A soft hum filled the air. The blue-white glow intensified, and then, in a flash of light that left spots dancing in Thomas's vision, the creature and the device were gone. He stood alone in the cold March night, staring at the empty space where something impossible had been. The stars overhead seemed brighter than before, more alive, as if he was seeing them for the first time. Thomas Whitfield had spent 59 years believing he was an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. Now he knew different. Now he knew the truth about Jesus, about the return, about the timeline that was already ticking toward a threshold that would determine humanity's future for the next 26,000 years. And he had less than 10 years to figure out what to do about it. The first week after the encounter, Thomas barely slept. He sat in his workshop for hours, staring at the spot where the device had been, replaying everything in his mind, the creature, the holograms, the visions of Jesus that had felt more real than any memory he had ever experienced. Part of him kept waiting to wake up, to discover it had all been some elaborate dream brought on by grief and isolation. But the clarity wouldn't fade. If anything, it grew sharper. He started noticing things he had never noticed before, the way sunlight moved through the pine trees, the intricate patterns in the bark, the pulse of life in everything around him. It was like someone had cleaned a dirty window he hadn't even known was there. On the 10th day, Thomas drove into town for groceries. He was standing in the checkout line when the woman in front of him turned around. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you okay? You look different." Thomas blinked. He didn't recognize her. Different how? "I don't know. Lighter, maybe. Like something good happened to you." Thomas didn't know what to say. He mumbled something about getting more sleep, but as he loaded his groceries into the truck, he caught his reflection in the window. She was right. Something had changed in his face. The heaviness that had lived behind his eyes for 3 years was gone. He started meditating, something he had never done before, never even considered. But the creature's words kept echoing in his mind. Frequency, resonance, raising your vibration. It sounded like nonsense, but after what he had experienced, he couldn't dismiss it. So he sat, every morning, just breathing, trying to find that feeling he had felt in the vision, that frequency of love that Jesus had radiated. At first, nothing happened. His mind raced, his back hurt. He felt ridiculous. But by the 3rd week, something shifted. He was sitting on his porch at sunrise, eyes closed, breathing slowly, and suddenly he felt it, a warmth in his chest, a vibration that seemed to hum through his entire body. For just a moment, the separation dissolved. He wasn't Thomas sitting on a porch. He was awareness itself, connected to everything, the trees, the sky, the earth beneath him. And in that moment, he felt Catherine, not saw her, not heard her, felt her, a presence, a warmth, a love that hadn't disappeared when her body stopped breathing. She was still there, just on a different frequency, exactly like the creature had said. Thomas wept, but not from grief, from relief, from joy, from finally knowing that the woman he had loved for 40 years still existed somewhere in the vast mystery of consciousness. After that, the changes accelerated. He started talking to people, really talking, not the polite small talk he had been doing for years. He listened, he connected, he looked into people's eyes and saw the same divine spark the creature had described. His daughter Emily noticed first. "Dad, what's going on with you?" she asked during their Sunday call. "You sound so different. Are you sure you're okay?" Thomas smiled. "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I think I'm finally waking up." He didn't tell her about the creature. Not yet. It was too much. She would think he had lost his mind. But he started sharing other things, the meditation, the sense of connection, the peace he was finding. Emily was skeptical, but curious. She had never heard her father talk about anything beyond circuits and practical repairs. "Maybe I'll try meditating," she said one Sunday. "If it's helping you this much." 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes 100. Thomas remembered the creature's words. This was how it worked, not through grand proclamations, through quiet transformation, through living differently, through letting the change radiate outward. 3 months after the encounter, Thomas went back to church, not because he believed in the old doctrines again, but because he understood something now. The people in those pews were searching for exactly what he had found. They were trying to reach the same truth through different words. He sat in the back, listened to the sermon. and instead of feeling empty like before, he felt compassion. For the pastor doing his best with incomplete understanding, for the congregation clinging to hope in a confusing world. After the service, the pastor approached him. "Thomas, it's been a long time. I'm glad to see you back." "I'm glad to be back," Thomas said, and meant it. "You seem different, at peace." Thomas nodded. "I finally understood something about Jesus, about what he was really teaching." The pastor raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Thomas thought carefully before answering. "That the kingdom isn't somewhere we go after we die. It's something we wake up to while we're still alive, and we're running out of time to realize it." The pastor looked puzzled, but something in his eyes flickered, a spark of recognition. "That's an interesting interpretation," he said slowly. "Maybe we should talk more about it sometime." "I'd like that." 1 becomes 10. 6 months later, Thomas started a small group. Just a few people at first, meeting in his living room on Wednesday evenings, talking about consciousness, about awakening, about what Jesus really taught beneath the layers of doctrine. He never mentioned the creature, never talked about aliens or devices or holograms. He just shared what he had experienced, the practices, the shifts, the connection that was available to anyone willing to look within. Some people thought he was crazy, that was fine. But others felt something, recognized something, started their own process of waking up. 10 becomes 100. Thomas looked at the calendar on his kitchen wall. March again, 1 year since the encounter. 9 years left until the threshold. He didn't know if humanity would make it, didn't know if enough people would awaken in time. The world seemed just as chaotic and divided as ever, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was doing his part, living as if the kingdom was already here, radiating what he had received, trusting the process. And every morning, when he sat on his porch to meditate, he felt Catherine beside him, not gone, just changed, waiting on the other side of a veil that grew thinner every day. Jesus had planted seeds 2,000 years ago. Thomas Whitfield was helping them bloom. Thomas Whitfield's story reveals something that most people are not ready to hear. The return of Jesus is not a future event. It is a present process, and you are part of it whether you realize it or not. The question is not whether Christ will return. The question is whether you will be awake when it happens, whether you will recognize the transformation unfolding all around you, whether you will participate in reaching the threshold that determines humanity's future. 10 years. That's the window, not centuries, not generations, years. And every single person who awakens makes it easier for others to awaken. Every person who raises their frequency creates ripples that spread outward. Every person who lives as if the kingdom is already here brings that kingdom closer to reality. This is not about religion, not about doctrine, not about being a good Christian or following the right rules. It's about waking up. It's about remembering what you really are. It's about accessing the same divine spark that Jesus demonstrated 2,000 years ago. The seeds are already inside you. They always have been. The only question is whether you will let them bloom. So I ask you now, have you felt it? That sense that something is coming? That strange knowing that your life is building towards something you can't quite name? Have you woken at odd hours with your heart racing? Have you sensed a presence just beyond the edge of your perception? Have you felt the pull towards something greater than the life you've been living? If you have, you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are waking up. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you've experienced. Tell me what you've felt. Because every person who shares their awakening helps others recognize their own. And if this story resonated with something deep inside you, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. There are more truths to uncover, more hidden knowledge to share, more stories that will challenge everything you think you know. The clock is ticking, the threshold is approaching, and Jesus is returning right now, through you, through me, through every human being who chooses to wake up. The only question left is this: will you be one of them?